Hey everyone, today's guest is Oliver Gellis. Oliver is a strategic brand building expert with over 15 years in the orthodontic industry who contributed to Ormco's leadership for nearly a decade. He currently serves as Senior Vice President of Customer Success with OrthoFi. Oliver graduated from Georgetown University's Foreign Service Program with focus in international business. And he's joining us today all the way over from the West Coast in Southern California. Oliver, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about you. How did the company start? Why did you start it?
I've been in the industry for over 15 years. I love this industry, not just for what it can do for patients, but I love working with the doctors. It's really a unique group of people. And, out of that affection for this industry and this group, I've really taken a great interest in the health of the business of this industry. And so it's my personal mission to help doctors deliver high quality treatment to more patients. And that's really what was the same mission that OrthoFi was founded on. It was founded by a couple of orthodontists who were seeing that the technology of faster treatment was impeding doctors from adopting it or getting paid. And so, we basically founded OrthoFi to allow doctors to offer the highest quality, highest technology, fastest and best treatment without having to worry about the financial implications of that. So it meshed my personal mission with the company's mission.
Yeah, so it was a good fit for you, huh? So how old of a company is it?
The product launched in 2014. So, we're coming up on our 6th year anniversary.
Awesome. Yeah, so you've seen a little bit of stuff going on in the last few years. So you're a data guy, which I appreciate. Of course, I'm a data guy too. So tell us a little bit about insights that you want to share with everyone.
Yeah, so one of the, not so accidental byproducts of starting OrthoFi is that because it's a point of sale CRM software system along with services, we capture mountains of point of sale data. We like to think that we have some of the best data, in the industry. And what that allows us to do is not just share that, for our customers and help to inform the product using that data, but it allows us to share it with the industry. So in times like this, when there's so much misinformation or underinformation and people are scrambling to know what to do, we definitely feel like it's a role we can play to help inform everybody so that they're making the best decisions. And we're sitting on, production data on over $2.2 billion of production. We're sitting on collection data on over $500 million of orthodontic collections. So it's a pretty nice end value to be able to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you seen any patterns in the last month that I think are relevant to share with all the COVID stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that mostly we've not seen anything very negative. Of course, not having same-day cash from new starts has had a little bit of a cliff impact on collections, as you would expect. Not having new insurance claims, all that brings the collections down to roughly 60%. And then, as we've shown, the projection of collections because of ongoing monthly patient payments and insurance payments, it will whittle down incrementally and gradually from there to where in a 2 to 3 month period, it will get down to 50%. But that's actually pretty good news for the orthodontist versus even something as close as general dentistry where the cliff is much steeper. So that's the good news. We've also seen that credit card auto pay success rates have been pretty stable pre and post COVID. And the collection rates for that reason have been pretty good. That said, one thing that we've been reporting on is if offices were not implementing auto pay or were not as disciplined about enforcing patients getting on auto pay, what we have seen is that that particular population of patients that is not on auto pay has increased their past due aging quite significantly. To the tune of 50 to 60% increase in their past due aging during this time. So that's just one example of things, that we've seen.
Gotcha. So do you guys do ACH and credit card for the auto pay? How does that work?
We do. We do. We take all forms of payment and all that stuff. And of course, we also do the insurance collections, which is another area that's interesting.
Yeah.
Insurance companies aren't not paying because they don't have the money, as we know,
Mm-hmm.
but they've all cut down their staffing significantly. So the turnaround time on remittance payments has actually increased. And so we've seen a little bit of increased aging in insurance. And then the other thing that a lot of orthodontists don't think about, because this is unprecedented, we've never been in a situation where orthodontists actually shut off new starts, is that the overall aging and past due balance is going to increase as a percentage, if for no other reason than just they have no new starts. So on the patient side, a third of the impact, which is about 16% increase in overall aging, a
Yeah.
third of that is simply because the denominator of total AR is actually going down and the numerator isn't going down as quickly. So part of it is just getting people to understand that the sky is not falling, that there is a little bit of COVID impact, but it's not as much as it seems when they look it up on their reports and see it up on the screen.
Gotcha. So what would you say number one priority is when they open back up to help speed up the recovery?
Obviously the first thing is get the revenue machine going, right? Yeah. And hopefully they've been preparing for it. We're big proponents of virtual consults. We're big proponents of mining their OBS pool, their pending patients, their recall readies, not necessarily just being ready to take on new patients, but really mining all of their opportunities, their lowest hanging fruit, and getting the revenue going. But then obviously the other part is they've got to get all their discipline back on all their collections, right? So they don't want to let people that have gone one or two payments possibly past due, every next payment decreases the likelihood that they're going to become current. So they need to get their hands right back on the wheel and start getting on their collections.
That makes sense. Do you have any projections of when you think people reopen?
We've done surveys with our clients. We have over 385 practices, and mostly the expectations jive with the state guidelines. So what we see is about 70% of offices are projecting to open the week of May 4th, and then we get over 80% the week of May 11th. Now that's just being open. What we are seeing and hearing is that practices are just going to get into their practice on that date, but they probably will take a few business days to circle the wagons, get their protocols, whatever their new PPE protocols are going to be, whatever their distancing protocols are going to be, how they're going to stage patients in and out to reduce the volume of people in the building. And they'll probably be doing some of that rehearsing for a few days before they actually start scheduling exams. So we capture exams in our system. So what we've seen is the exam scheduling is lagging their expectations of when they're going to open. And that's how we're interpreting that.
Oh, that's interesting. Because you have the exam data right in the system. Oh, that's very valuable. Especially when you can collect all of it, look at patterns. Is there anything we could be doing now? Should we try to be working on collections now if our team is working virtually?
Yeah, hopefully practices have not furloughed all of their team.
Yeah.
Hopefully they have retained some of the vital people on that side of the house, the financial folks, and they've stayed disciplined. Because again, on the insurance side, all of those impacts will end up coming back as carriers staff back up. But on the patient side, a patient that has gone one or two payments past due, it's going to be that much harder to get them back current. So hopefully they've stayed disciplined. And then the other thing is the scheduling part. So we haven't seen that they've done a lot of scheduling, but we're trying to get offices to understand whether or not you're open. Once you know when you're going to be open, you should start proactively starting to reach out to these patients, let them know, and start scheduling them in.
Oh, so you see the schedules and the actual when the exams happen in the system?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're seeing?
Yeah, we do that because we have to queue up their eligibility verification. So we do all of their insurance eligibility checks. And so we need to know when the exam is so that we can queue up the check to be ready before their exam.
Oh, okay. Well, explain that process. How does that eligibility check for work for insurance?
Yeah, so it's a lot of nervous activity in a standard practice, and a lot of times it's a big burden on either the front desk or if they have an insurance coordinator that's tasked with doing that. Patients we've seen prior to OrthoFi, didn't do a great job of filling out their intake forms prior to coming in, so a lot of times it's the last minute check.
Yeah.
And then the practice is at the mercy of the carrier hold times, which on average can be 15 to 20 minutes. Sometimes, on bad days, 45 or more minutes, which can actually get in the way of a practice positioning accurate patient responsibility fees to the patient that day. So sometimes practices have to send patients home without getting their fees. So they
That's interesting. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that because I'm not inside the practice. And it's potentially going to be much worse in the next few months as even insurance companies ramp up their own teams coming back from all of this too, huh?
That's right. So what we do to stave that off is we provide mobile-friendly patient forms. So when the practice schedules the patient, OrthoFi reaches out via email and text with mobile-friendly forms that allow the patient to fill out all that stuff directly from their phone. We see roughly 80 to 85% at-home completion rate, which then allows OrthoFi to take all the insurance information and proactively go out and check that insurance, so that hopefully when the patient comes in, all their forms are completed, their insurance is checked, and so all they need to do is get the nice office tour, the bottle of water, coffee, and get ready for a powerful consult with the practice.
Oh, that makes sense. Can you check, say, 24 hours before to see who hasn't filled it out and maybe send them a reminder? Is that possible?
Yep. We have a dashboard that they look at through our software that tells them, it gives them kind of like a whole traffic management breakdown throughout the day of, who's coming in tomorrow, who's done their forms, who hasn't, and they can send out reminders from within our platform.
That makes sense. And also a lot of offices are going to have people wait in their car instead of the waiting room. So if it's mobile, you could potentially, if they still haven't done it, send them yet another reminder and have them do it in the car, and at least they could sit in their car during that whole time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Going, hopefully fully paperless. Yep.
Makes sense. So are there any changes from COVID you think that you project are going to happen within the practice?
I think that there is going to be obviously a shelf up in terms of, activity and exams, but we don't see it fully returning to pre-COVID numbers and volume probably until later in the year. It'll take some time for consumer behavior to catch up. Obviously, there's going to be some, like you said, staging patients in and out. They won't be able to bring in full volume. The other thing we're looking at is actually the actual financial offers. So we're looking at is discounting going up, which thankfully it really has not very much. It's less than probably 6 to 7%.
Oh, that's
increase
interesting.
in discounting.
Not up that much.
And the other thing that's really interesting is that pay in full rate, the percentage of cases that come in as pay in fulls, pre-COVID was 22%, and right now since COVID has been 21%. So virtually no change there.
Wow.
So another great message to practices is if they're worried that they're going to have to do some deep discounting to get patients to start, we haven't seen any evidence of that. Thankfully, the federal government's been pretty quick to put out stimulus packages. Even unemployment has been mitigated by some of those benefits. So financially, it's not so much of an issue about financial affordability. Certainly some practices are making a conscious quid pro quo trade-off to get some cash to get patients to put a down payment on now before they come in, or a higher down payment. So if they want to do that, but there's really no reason for them to have to discount to get a start.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's, even from a marketing point of view, it's going to affect my advice to clients. Because if we don't need to do that, there's no reason to, that's for sure. So tell us a little bit about your solutions, particularly for OrthoFi. What do you guys offer? What does it do?
Yeah, so our mission is all about getting more starts, and we, specifically want to, be the same day start leader.
Okay.
So what we do is we provide a software that acts as a whole CRM, patient acquisition flow for the practice, that brings them from that first call with the forms all the way, to the consult. And then we were the ones that pioneered the concept of an open choice payment slider. So when it comes to presenting fees, what we see in the data over and over, and what's really important, is practices need to be more flexible, especially in a time like COVID. So I did say they're not discounting, but in terms of like the terms probably for some patients need to be more flexible, meaning for some patients, you may need to have a lower down and allow them to extend beyond treatment time for it to be affordable.
Yeah.
But we don't want every patient necessarily to choose that, because it will hurt the practice's cash flow.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we provide a slider that's powered by some pretty good algorithms that really help to balance cash flow and risk by allowing the patient to choose their plan, not just on the low end, not just allowing them some lower down and lower monthly options, but also allowing some of the patients that want to take advantage of some incentives to put down higher downs and higher monthlies, so that the balance, the blended average, comes out to something very healthy for the practice.
So is the algorithm creating these incentives to have a higher down? Is it just lower interest or something? What kind of incentives is it giving the potential?
So you brought up the word interest. So one of the incentives on the slider is we do allow patients to go out often as long as 36 months to pay, which on average is about 12 months beyond treatment. But we do apply a low level and a slightly climbing rate of interest if they do. So there's an incentive not to choose longer plans. So it keeps the ones that don't need it within the treatment time. But for the ones that do need it, it gives them the flexibility. And then we also have incentives on the down payment. So rather than just have the traditional pay in full discount, we have introduced the concept of a tiered discount. So if the patient puts 50% down, instead of getting a 5% incentive, they may get a 1 or 2% incentive on that, or a 2 to 3% incentive for a 75% down. Because not everyone has $5,000, but some people do put down $2,000 or $3,000, which practices never took advantage of before.
So is this all customizable by the practice? They can decide what the incentives are? How does that work?
It is, but we obviously recommend the data-driven, default settings, because, like I said, we constantly are recalibrating it. And then the other thing that we do is we do collect a soft credit validation through our forms. So we do a soft credit check, and then we calibrate the offers that are available on the slider to that patient. So some patients may see a slightly higher minimum down, and some patients may see slightly shorter terms, or the interest may start a little bit earlier, and it's all calibrated around payment performance for that group of patients.
Oh, that's nice. So it's totally personalized based off the soft credit results. That makes
exactly
a difference. So you're helping to mitigate risk that way. That's really
exactly.
Okay.
And then we collect on it. So we're opening practices to take on more patients than they were able to maybe before with their standard terms.
Yeah.
But then we make sure that they collect on it. So we've got the professional revenue cycle management services behind it to make sure that they collect on it from the patient and from the insurance.
Are you calling actual patients if there's an issue with payment, et cetera? Also, you're taking some of that financial coordinator role off there.
Yeah, we basically, what we like to say is we turn the coordinator into a manager versus being the clerk. So we are the clerk. And what that does is it liberates the practice team to focus on playing offense.
Yeah.
So all of that time drain and focus drain that they normally dispense towards collecting on overdue balances, we're taking on that burden. And then they get to focus all their time on how to grow, how to get new patients, how to scale. If they want to add another location or practice, they have more focus and time to do that.
Oh, great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Anything that helps with the bandwidth of a single, especially right? So kind of walk me through the process, this customer journey, since you actually have a CRM. I really wasn't aware that you had a CRM. So if someone comes to the site, they fill out one of your forms, what's happening after that?
So you get an email and a text message welcoming you to the practice and soliciting you to fill out your intake forms.
Yeah.
So you click that, and then on your phone, you'll fill out your intake forms. That information is visible immediately to the practice and to OrthoFi. We do all of the eligibility verification so that when you show up, the practice sees on their dashboard that you're all ready to go.
Yeah.
And then in your forms, we also collect some preference information. So for example, are you looking for faster treatment or clear and invisible treatment? Are you looking to start today? Are you, various preference questions that we provide to the practice in a quick little cheat sheet. So it kind of helps
So
them.
it's helping with that conversation when you're talking to them, kind of.
Exactly. So when you walk in, doctor already knows you're looking maybe for Invisalign, let's say, or you're looking for clear brackets. They know that you're looking to start soon, so they can customize their presentation to you. And then when we get to the actual fee presentation, the office is able to populate and hand over a tablet to you.
Yeah.
And you as the patient get to select your payment plan right there. We obviously want them to focus on getting that start today. That's what we train all the time. But if worst case scenario, you're not ready to make a commitment today, we can send the slider home to you. And at home, you can not only select your plan, but sign the contract and make your down payment from home. So we do all that. And then all of that data that's collected on the contract goes straight into our software that we use to go ahead and collect on it from that point forward. So they have a whole reporting suite that they can look at in OrthoFi, that they can look at all of the information on their accounts, all the ledgers, all the reporting, performance reporting. So we track it through the life of the whole thing. And then when it comes to insurance, whatever the practice selected as their treatment, we auto-populate their claim. We submit their insurance claim for them.
Yeah.
And then we track all of the insurance as well, and we collect on all that as well.
And that's all, you can see all the data in the dashboard regarding the status of that part of it.
Exactly.
So do you sync with any of the patient management systems? Is that data pushed to any of them?
We currently integrate with two systems. We integrate with Cloud9 and with Dolphin. Mainly the integration is on the front end to avoid the practice having to do a lot of dual data entry. All the financial information is still in OrthoFi, so practices that are on with us look at all that stuff there.
Yeah.
But the front end with the exam creation, the patient information, all that, it gets pulled into or pushed into OrthoFi.
Great. It sounds like you could adapt some of this process to be more virtual right now. Could you potentially do the presentation over Zoom or something and do the slider with them right there and get them to contract like virtually, and then they come to the office after they've signed?
Exactly. So practices have been using Zoom, the new Zoom Healthcare, which is HIPAA compliant. Of course, there are great solutions like SmileSnap that we've seen doctors using out there, or Doxy.
I didn't know there was a Zoom Healthcare. No one's mentioned that yet.
It's a little bit more expensive. It's a couple $100 a month versus Zoom, but it's they promote it as being HIPAA compliant.
That's huge. I mean, just the fact that it's available. Okay.
Yeah, but then they can
talk to them. They're pretty cool.
So they can send them the slider, and actually they can shift control to the patient. So they can show them the slider on their screen, shift control to the patient, allow the patient to play with the slider live, interactively.
Yeah.
And then they can actually sign the contract right there. So we can get same day starts virtually right now.
Have you had doctors telling you that they're doing that and it's working?
Yeah.
It makes a lot.
One of our founders, he has done, over 100 starts in the month of April.
Really?
And he went from not doing any virtual consults at all. He didn't fully get it. He didn't see the utility of it. Yeah. But then when this happened, he's like, I better figure this out. And so we've created a virtual flow that's allowed them to be pretty successful.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really almost made for it anyway. You just had to change a couple little steps. It makes a lot of sense. Any other insights that you've seen that you want to share with everyone? Yeah,
it's really just about focus. just I mentioned it before, but a lot of practices during this time, when it comes to their own staffing, I think that they've just sort of like leaned everyone out and maybe furloughed their entire team. So practices that have been performing better have obviously retained, one of their key TCs and maybe their financial person, and they've been working. They've been mining their opportunities and staying in touch with patients.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that we capture exams, but also by type. So what we see is that a lot of practices have made potentially the mistake of focusing too much on new patients, right? Whoever is maybe coming into their website or calling their number,
Yeah.
and they've been focusing more of their time catering to scheduling some exams with those folks. But the truth is, the biggest opportunity, the ones that have been the most successful, have been the ones that have been focused on all of their latent opportunities, meaning all of their phase, their phase one shifting into phase twos, their recall readies, the patients that would have normally come up for treatment during this time,
Mm-hmm.
and all their pending management. Pending management is probably the most underserved opportunity in every practice in America.
That's an interesting statement. Okay. Is all that data, is it in OrthoFi or it's in their patient management system?
We have a pending patient tool in OrthoFi that, again, it functions as a CRM. So when they don't successfully start a patient, OrthoFi forces them to disposition that outcome and to create a follow-up activity. And so if they use it, what we've seen is practices that actively use the pending management tool have an 18% higher conversion rate than those that don't. Now, obviously, that was pre-COVID.
Yeah, of course.
But the
18% is significant. I mean,
18% is pretty significant.
If it's half of that, it's still worth it.
And all it really is it creates discipline. All it really does is it forces the person tasked to do follow-ups to have to do the follow-up or disposition it in the software. So it gives the practice full visibility to, have we actually been keeping up with our follow-ups and how many touches have we made? And just injecting that little bit of discipline is a needle mover, because a lot of these practices, they either batch it, they put it off and then try to do a bunch of calls, once a week or twice a month. And it doesn't work, because every patient opportunity, the data shows, is on a pretty fixed erosion cycle. So after 10 days, a patient loses most of their interest in starting, especially an adult patient. So if you batch and you do it every 2 weeks, the person that you saw over 10 days ago is far less likely. So it's actually an activity they need to do every single day and have that.
We totally agree. And we know how hard it is. That's why we offer that as a service, because some practices, it's not going to happen, but it needs to happen. So call them for you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, are there any marketing campaigns that you would recommend that you've seen work? The clients we have in OrthoFi, of course, we have ones generally like super low down payment. This is your payment per month. Are there any other ones you recommend work when you're trying to promote the positive aspects of using OrthoFi or having great financing for your practice, et cetera?
I think, let's take COVID out of the picture. I would say in general, it's that they offer, high quality, high technology treatment for flexible, and that they're flexible in terms, not necessarily less. We don't often recommend discounting and doing a lot of promotions in terms of like cutting down fees, but that they really position themselves as offering the best treatment for the most affordable flexibility. We've seen, you don't have to have the lowest fees to be the most affordable. You can actually have the highest fees in your area and be the most affordable if you're willing to be flexible with the terms.
Yeah, that makes sense. Of course.
But right now, obviously, the advertising should be focused around safety, availability, right? Making sure that when people come to your website, which is your new doorstep, that they know right away that you can help them right now.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that we can get closer to a start virtually. I mean, you really are open. Because we started by a couple clients were saying they were closed, and then we realized, no, that's not the messaging. We're open. We're just open virtually. So we flipped that within a week because that was like, no, that was a mistake. Let's fix this because we are open. We're just open virtually. We can't do everything right this second, but we can definitely get you closer to the end.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, is there any other insights?
I mean, how much time do you have? No.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, for right now, in this time, I know that doctors are just so focused on the stuff that's immediate, and so that's probably the best that I can, do right now. That they would, be interested in and take the time to absorb.
Yeah, absolutely. And mining low-hanging fruit right now, I think, is just a great idea. I mean, even if you're just cleaning up the data, because sometimes the patient management system doesn't match another system, just make sure it's all correct. There's a lot of stuff like that that help make you successful later on.
One note, before this thing, there was a lot of chatter and a lot of anxiety about direct-to-consumer options like Smile Direct Club and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And what's really interesting that we've gotten some good information on is, when you chart and map all of the Google reviews for some of our top doctors against the Google reviews for Smile Direct Club, what's interesting is that what patients value and what they mention in the positive reviews are virtually identical, with one exception, which is that the two terms that they most commonly mention about Smile Direct Club that they don't mention about top performing orthodontic practices are the words easy and convenient.
Really? I mean, that is very valuable information.
And so if you think about what we're talking about with virtual consults and making it easy for a patient to come in, it points to, making sure that you move away. If you have a multi-step consult process, that you move to a one-step consult process. A lot of practices think that patients want to come in 2 or 3 times before starting, and
yeah,
that's a
convenient. That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. They want to know that if they want something today, that they can make an appointment, they can come in and they can get started. And then this virtual consult is not going to go away after COVID. I think people are going to see that it's going to be a tool that they might have to use for some patients that have, a lot of that don't have a lot of disposable time. That are willing to get on for 15 or 20 minutes on a consult virtually, but maybe don't have the time to square away a visit.
Absolutely. And if you're not doing it, your competition is. So if there's any reason to do it, it's that.
That's right.
I totally agree. I remember my junior high school teacher used to call us and that was me. I'm old now, the microwave generation. So I can always imagine what it is now. Everyone wants instant results. Give it to me. That makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of practices will come out better off than they were after all of this, because we're forcing these process improvements and these efficiencies that people were hesitant to do because it required change, but we're all forced to do it if we want to succeed and grow.
These are separating times. Those that have just shut the lights off and put their heads in the sand will find themselves several steps behind those who have been reinventing themselves, looking at all their systems, making the tweaks that they would never have had the time or opportunity to do. The best analogy I've heard during this period of time is it's similar to a 5-lane highway shutting down to one lane. The cars that are in front that get to go past the shutdown race ahead, and the ones that are far in the back, they might not even start moving for a while. And so I firmly believe that's what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's a great point, because it's hard for me to imagine just putting your head down in the sand and not doing anything, but I guess people really are doing that. That is super scary, because if everyone has these processes in place now and are using them right now, and they're training the team right now, and all the customers are now used to these virtual processes, so that even customer behavior is just totally changing, crazy fast. Yeah, good point. So if someone wants to learn more, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you guys?
Easiest way is go to startmoresmiles.com. or go to the OrthoFi Facebook page. There's a couple of different ways that you can connect. What we normally do is we set up time with a practice to go over an overview virtually, and they and their teams are all invited. They can ask a million questions. And what I always say is we show them a lot of information and a lot of data through those. So even if they end up not purchasing OrthoFi and not becoming a customer, it's valuable time spent because it can probably help them to think differently about their practice. So either way, it's just good education, and they can find out that way. Sorry, there's one more way that they can reach us, which is to text more smiles to 72,000.
Okay.
If they're text friendly, that's another way that they can reach us, and we'll get right back to them, and they can even schedule right online. But thank you very much.
You got it. Oliver, thanks so much for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.